Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Rawson with Art Builds Community. I'm going to start today's program, Mapping Women's History, with our land acknowledgement. We would like to begin today's program by recognizing that while we gather in the Santa Clara County, we are gathered on the ethno-historic tribal territory of the Timian Ohlone, which included the lands of the Paleños and who were related to direct ancestors of the lineages enrolled in the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, who were missionized into Mission Santa Clara, San Jose, and San Francisco. The lands on which Santa Clara County are established was and continue to be of great significance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. We also recognize that the ancestors of the Muwekma Ohlone constructed and maintained the three Bay Area missions. The city of San Jose and Santa Clara County extends to surrounding areas that held several Tupenca traditional roundhouses, which were once located at the historic Lupe Niego's land grant, Rancho Pozolmi y Positas de las Animas, and also at Marcelo, Pio, and Cristobal's land grant, Rancho Ulistec, which were places of celebration and religious ceremonies, as well as the nearby ancestral heritage shell mounds that served as the tribe's traditional cemetery sites and territorial monuments. The greater Santa Clara County communities also desires to honor the military service of the Muwekma men and women who have honorably served overseas during World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and who are still serving in the United States Armed Forces today. Thank you everyone for joining us for Mapping Women's History campaign launch. This is a program that is part of the Womanhood Project. What is the Womanhood Project? The Womanhood is Santa Clara County-wide arts-centered project that will recognize the historic contributions of Santa Clara County women across all intersectional identities to the region and beyond. In 2018, County of Santa Clara supervisors began a conversation about how women are represented in public spaces and endorsed a plan for artworks that commemorate their achievements. In 2020, the Office of Women's Policy launched Womanhood, a project that will honor the historic contributions of women across all intersectional identities and acknowledging that this region was originally occupied by the Ohlone and Muwekma Ohlone people. Womanhood is a public art and digital media project that will commission interactive, educational, and accessible artifacts and public artworks to promote the historical recognition and representation of women. The goal of the project, which was launched and supported by the County of Santa Clara, is to ensure equity and inclusion of women from all economic, employment, and cultural backgrounds by artfully highlighting their critical roles in the region and beyond. So what is the Mapping Women's History campaign? This project is an opportunity to reclaim women's role in our region as we consider issues of representation and cultural equity. Womanhood will employ artists from all disciplines as storytellers, revealing women's histories as trailblazers, artists, explorers, and essential workers. An online mapping platform will enable community members to identify locations where women's contributions may be recognized through public artworks, naming and renaming of significant sites. A permanent digital archive will connect the projects to place, engage the public, and promote education, exploration, and play. So today we have two presentations. I would like to introduce our first guest. Her name is Courtney. Courtney heads up marketing and operations at coUrbanize, a woman-led startup that empowers people to shape the future of their communities through online engagement. She's passionate about helping companies transform and grow through the inventive marketing and communications and elevating women in their careers. She is also active in her hometown's arts and cultural community, coming off a 3-year stint on her local cultural council. Welcome, Courtney. Before we start the program, I want to remind everybody to please submit your questions, comments on Facebook or YouTube and in the comment section, and we will share them with Courtney during the Q&A session.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amanda. I'm so happy to be here with everybody. My goal for today was to tell you a little bit about coUrbanize, which is a women-founded company, and then to go in and actually show off how coUrbanize will be used to gather the community's ideas around mapping women's history. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here today. To start, coUrbanize is a female-founded, female-led startup. We're based out of Boston, although we work across the country. And our platform is really designed to encourage more people to influence and shape the future of their communities. We work with cities and towns, regional initiatives similar to this project, and also individual real estate development projects so more community feedback can be gathered about a particular project. And with coUrbanize, the whole goal is that people can share their feedback, their questions, their ideas just by posting a comment online. You could text in your feedback or even leave a voicemail that then gets transcribed onto the platform by our team. And another really powerful thing about the tool is that you can do this in multiple languages. And that is really a great way of getting more people involved, even if they're not comfortable communicating English as their preferred language. At the end of the day, the platform really breaks down the barriers that prevent people from participating in planning processes. And those barriers could be that they may not have the time to attend a full meeting or to participate in a workshop. They may not, like I said, speak the language that may be most comfortable to them in that meeting. And they may also just want to do this in a way that requires less time on their part. So that's kind of the goal behind coUrbanize. We're really excited for this project in particular. So in addition to being female-founded, female-led, about 70% of our staff identify as women. And that's a really exciting thing for us to just have a project like this in our portfolio that reflects who we are as a company and that really is focused on extending the values of the work that we do and celebrating all of the accomplishments that women in this particular area have done. So I'll start by actually going through and walking through the Womanhood Mapping project on coUrbanize, where you can leave your feedback. And we'll go from there. And I'll also show an example of a similar project that we did so you can get a sense for, at the end, what we kind of want to see on the project page. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So this is the page that you land on when you go to coUrbanize, and the team will start promoting this link so everyone can have it at easy access. This is the page where you'll find out just more information about the project. So a lot of the information that Amanda has already shared, you'll be able to click through and see examples of different types of artwork that's already in the area and to gather some kind of inspiration for, the end goal of what this project could be. As you'll scroll down, you'll see who's involved in the project, and then also you'll have the opportunity to translate this entire site into different languages. And these languages were selected based on those that were most prominently spoken in the area. I'm not fortunate enough to know a second language all that well, so I'll just continue to keep it in English. But just by clicking on one of these, it allows you to translate it. As you scroll through this page, you'll get to see a little bit of the backstory about this project, what it is, the goal for it, and then also different ways to get involved. As Amanda has said, coUrbanize is just one piece of this. There are other things that you can do, like attending an online workshop, nominating a particular woman who has inspired you and making contributions to the community, and also to follow the project on social media. If you click over to the timeline, you'll get a sense of what's happened already on the project. So for people who are just getting familiar with the project, this is a great place to go and to just see what's already happened and then to get a sense for what's happening next. So you'll see here that the launch for the campaign is on the calendar and that there's an upcoming workshop on the 28th. More information about project goals can be found here. And then you can also share this site out. So through Facebook, through Twitter, you can just grab a link so you can share it via email. And then the other thing to think about is subscribing. So I'm already subscribed to the project, but typically there's just a subscribe button here. And by clicking on it, you'll get periodic updates whenever the project team is sending out updates around what's going on with the project, if there are new questions that you can answer, or if they're looking for more feedback from the community on a particular topic. You can get a sense of those updates here. So here's kind of the first update that describes what the platform is. It invites you to poke around, and you can see that I've subscribed, so that would have gone to my email. But you could also share this update with somebody else in your network as well. So that's kind of the background aspect of coUrbanize. It's a great place, again, for people who are just getting familiar with this project. If you're inviting others, it allows you to kind of have a comfort level that there's information there when they get there that kind of orients everyone around the purpose of the project page. The real meat of it is our map. So if you click on the map tab, you'll see that there's kind of a not shaded in area that kind of depicts the county. And you'll see that there's already some comments on here around things that people want to highlight. Right here, the categories explain what the colors mean. So there's opportunities to share existing recognition art, to talk about existing buildings that are important, parks and trails, but also to share your feedback on what else you would like to see here. You can see what those comments have been by scrolling through on the left-hand side. You can support a comment. If, say, you see a fellow community member's idea that's really exciting to you, just hit support and that kind of upvotes the idea. You could respond and say, that's a great idea. You could respond and say, this sounds good. Some of the other things that I was thinking about related to this or that. So it's really meant to be a dialogue between community members, but also the project team can respond to you here. So say you pop in an idea and they need to ask some clarifying questions, or they just want to thank you for your support, you'll get to see their responses in here as well. And you'll get updated through email as well when people respond to you. So the crux of this is we want people to put some comments on the map. So you can zoom in to a particular area. It goes all the way down to kind of street level. And you can say, all right, as I'm scrolling through here, here's a place where I think there could be an interesting opportunity for public art. You could hit comment on the map. You just drag the map to kind of where you want the comment to be. It'll confirm that this is the location that you'd like. You just hit yes. And then you can type in your response. So say this test, just so I know to delete it later. This is a great opportunity to celebrate, don't mind my spelling, women here. You'll give it a category. So note if it's an existing building or if it's a future opportunity for artwork recognition, pop that in. And then when you post the comment, it will be added to the map. You can kind of zoom back out and see what other comments have already been posted. So you can just go through if you'd like, and to get inspiration for other ideas or to see what your fellow community members have already said, you can just pop in and kind of get a sense for where that comment lives on the map. And just click through, and that's another way where you can simply put in your notes around, hey, I support this, or this sparked another idea and is a great way to continue the conversation. Other than that, I think that's kind of the main point of the map. So if the goal is come to coUrbanize, poke around, get a sense of what the project is about, and then start to put your ideas in here and to see what other community members have put in. As I said at the top, we've done this type of work before. So we've done a project in Palo Alto. We also did a project in Glendale that I wanted to kind of show as, what is the end game for all of this? And this project is closed, but if you look up here in terms of the number of feedback that they've gotten, got over 500 comments, which is a really great thing for the team to then take all of that information and say, okay, what do we do about this? How do we actually go through and celebrate art in the different ways that the community has asked for? So the goal is to get a whole bunch of comments and to get the community's feedback. And you can see here that they did a really good job of updating the community about other things going on about the project. So these are some other examples of the types of updates that you can see on coUrbanize when you subscribe. You can get notifications of those meetings. So it can also be kind of your one-stop shop to just keep up to date with the project beyond what your fellow community members are posting on the page. I think with that, I'll hand it back over to Amanda. I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions that come in, and hopefully we'll just continue the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Courtney. That's incredibly helpful. So we're gonna go ahead and chat with you after we have Ellis's presentation, and then Quinn and I will do a Q&A, and we'll see what people send our way. So thank you again. All right. So as I said, we're going to be listening to one more person. So Alice Harry is the Senior Accountant Executive of Partnerships and Promotions for geocaching, the world's largest treasure hunting game. The game's passionate community of millions of players use the geocaching app and GPS-enabled devices to find cleverly hidden containers called geocaches. Today, there are more than 3 million geocaches in over 190 countries. Ellis is a geocaching lackey and amateur weekend warrior. Her passion for travel and adventure has taken her to remote villages in the Brazilian Amazon, ski mountaineering in the Andes, in the Patagonia, and sailing the isolated islands of the Kingdom of Tonga. She now resides in Seattle, where her daily adventure involves competing with traffic while biking, commuting, and making frequent side trips to the beautiful Cascades in Puget Sound. She loves incorporating geocaching into all of these activities. So please join us as we watch a pre-recorded session presented by Alice.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellis from Geocaching, and I'm here today to speak about adventures in women's history and how you can gamify locations to engage audiences while social distancing. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what is geocaching, what is Adventure Lab, and then how can art and community experiences be accessible during COVID-19. I'll share a few examples and some tips for creators and then conclude. So geocaching is a game that has been around for 20 years. Started as a GPS forum where GPS enthusiasts were posting coordinates for things to go find. First one was in the woods outside Portland, Oregon. It was a big bucket. And when you went to that set of coordinates, you were prompted to go find the container, open it up, and sign a logbook. Since 2000, there are now over 3 million active geocaches worldwide. Those are hidden in 191 different countries on all 7 continents. Yes, even Antarctica. So the game is extremely popular, and so much so that in 2014, geocaching was the first new word to be added to the Scrabble dictionary in 9 years. And pre-pandemic and post, we expect geocachers were gathering at over 36,000 events annually to share stories and play the game. So these are geocaching meetup events where, in addition to going geocaching together, there's music and food and drink and relationship building throughout the game. So geocaching, like I said, it's going out and finding a physical item with a set of coordinates. These photos show different types of geocaches. So it's a completely community-driven game. People like yourselves can go and hide geocaches in your favorite spots, whether it's a park or a building near you that has a magnetic pole or something like that. The sizes can vary and what they look like can vary. So the one on the left is a good option for a more urban environment where you have to camouflage it pretty well. It's actually a magnetic box that opens up and it's attached to the bottom of this fence. The one on the right is in a wooded environment, and so you have a little more room to hide something like that. They have a larger container. It opens up, it's like a Tupperware container, and inside you would find a logbook to sign. But in addition to that, you might find fun items for trading. Kids love those bigger ones because there's usually cool trinkets inside. So in the past year, we've introduced a new product with the geocaching game. It's called Adventure Lab. And it still requires you to go out and physically have that experience and navigate to a set of coordinates. But the main distinction is that instead of finding a physical box or container, you're clue finding. It's more like a digital scavenger hunt. So here we have a group of people who are going to play an adventure. As they approach and they navigate with the app, they get closer to this site. And there's both a plaque there, and then there's also a plant next to that stone bench that has the Latin name for that plant. And so there's 2 different things here that you could be looking for as part of the adventure. When they get closer to that location within the app, it'll unlock the question and answer. And the question could be, what is the Latin name for this plant? And then you type that into the field and submit it, and then that's the completion component. Or the question could be something about this plaque. So maybe there is a dedication on the plaque, and it asks a question about what year the bench was built or something like that. You could enter that into the plaque or into the app, and then that's how you complete that location and move on to the next one. So there's a series of locations that are all themed within an adventure, and that creates an overall experience that's really engaging with that location. So an example that I think is pretty relevant to what you all are thinking about with mapping womanhood is the Baytown Art Venture Lab. So this is in Baytown, Texas. There are 9 public art locations. There's murals. In this photo here, you can see there's umbrellas hanging over this alley that has beautiful artwork all over it. And there's clues hidden within the artwork. So when you are playing the adventure and you go to that location, it actually asks you to find those clues within the artwork and then plug that into the app. And then if you get it right, you complete it and you move on to the next piece of artwork in Baytown. So it's a really fun way to not only engage people with art in a deeper level, but also a lot of people don't even know these locations exist until they play the adventure, and it takes them there, and that's how they discover it. This QR code and link here will take you directly to that adventure. So if you're ever in Baytown, you can certainly explore this one. You can also look at the description, but you won't be able to play unless you physically go and visit it in Baytown. However, this also shows you ways that you can share the adventure with your community or through, social channels. So both through QR code and through a link, if you share that out, people will be taken directly to your adventure to go play. Another example that's a little different and might give you some more ideas as you're thinking through locations is when we worked with Nickelodeon on the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV series. So the TV series is all located in New York City. They wanted to do themed locations around the city that related to the Ninja Turtles, so actual places that they visit in the series and maybe relate to the characters' personalities. So they launched this at the 2019 NYC Comic-Con right before COVID hit. So in a way, it was kind of ahead of their time because they launched it with the intention of it being a big event. But then even with everything shutting down, they were still able to keep the adventure live and people could play it because they could just go outside on their own and go play it instead of going to an event. And the great thing about it is that it was all across Midtown Manhattan and the locations were themed. And so you could discover really interesting hidden gems about the city that you may not have found otherwise. On the player side, this is just kind of what it looks like. So you'll navigate to a location, you'll learn about it. So there's a description there, and then you'll be prompted with a question and answer. When you get the answer correct, you will have a message pop up like this right here, which is the journal. It could be video, it could be as simple as congratulations, you found it, or you could have a video embedded there as well. So, or images as well as video. So now we're going to watch a video from my colleagues at Geocaching that will give you some tips on how to create a geocaching adventure lab, and it'll show you what sorts of things make a good adventure.
This is Erin. She loves geocaching, exploring, and is a major foodie. Luckily, with Adventures, Erin can combine all three. Adventures allow you to take your geocaching to an exciting new level. Creators can set up an engaging tour of multiple locations for adventure seekers to enjoy. Erin chose to take people on a walking food tour of her favorite neighborhood in Seattle. Meet adventure seekers, Linda and David. They loved Erin's adventure because she kept these top 5 geocaching adventure tips in mind. It's important to choose a theme or tell a story that ties everything together. Erin's adventure shares a little history about the yummy foods you get to eat along the way. Your adventure could help people learn about local trees, architecture, or make a fun game. There are so many options waiting for your creativity. Your locations can be set indoors or outdoors, but they must be permanent and within cell phone range. Set players up for success by getting accurate coordinates for each stage. The adventure can only be played while within a reasonable range of your locations. We call this geofencing and recommend keeping it at default in the app. You may choose to send people on a linear path if you're telling a specific story or helping them to navigate more efficiently. Aaron kept it easy by selecting non-linear, which allows players to follow wherever their stomachs lead. Unlike geocaching, adventures don't require you to find a container. You will, however, need to create a location solution that can only be determined by visiting the location, not by an online search. Finding the solution doesn't have to be easy, but the answer needs to be clear. For example, the number 8 versus the word 8. Let your players know what kind of time commitment they're in for. To attract the most adventure seekers, we recommend keeping it under 2 hours and clarify if transportation is required. Linda and David were able to visit and have a snack at all 5 locations in 1 hour and 23 minutes. Take some time to let all this digest. Then check this out for more inspiration on creating an engaging adventure.
Okay, so that video touched on a lot of what is on this slide here, but I can explain in more detail. So one thing I highly recommend is actually going out and playing an adventure near you to see what the experience is like. Once you've played an adventure or several, you will know, okay, you like that about that adventure, or maybe there were things you would do better. So that gives you a good sense of what types of adventures are good experience. Also, all locations should have strong cell phone coverage or Wi-Fi. So if you don't have those, it won't work. Just something to think about as you're creating different locations. And ideally, your adventure is walkable, but of course, there might be locations that are further from each other. But think about, like the video says, how people would get from one location to another and how long that would take. Once people get to that location, it really should be something that speaks for itself. It should be something that when they get there, they're required to learn something or engage with something to answer that question. So if it's public artwork, maybe you can ask a question about, the artwork itself, something that they observe. If there's any text included, the question can ask about that too. And something that wasn't in that video is that this can be multiple choice or it could be short answers. So you have those different options. And the fun thing too is that when people play the adventure, they can leave feedback through activity logs. So most of the time people are saying they had a great time. Maybe they tell a little story about what they experienced, or maybe just simply say, thank you for putting out a great adventure. So in more detail on the features, the Adventure Lab app is localized, so it's supported in 29 different languages. It's all location-based, so it needs to be something where you physically have to visit those locations in order to play. It should not be something you could just look up on the internet and get the answer. It can be linear or non-linear, so you can choose to create a linear path where they must complete it in a certain order and unlock that previous location to get to the next one. Or you can just have them choose their own order and do it at random. So they could either do a few locations or the entire thing and still have an experience. The geofencing verification, that's where you set how far they need to be within those coordinates in order to unlock the question and answer. And then there's lots of creativity with video, images, and text that you can include in each location. And we're always iterating on the platform. So if you ever have any feedback, please share. We'd love to hear it. So I want you all to think about what locations around Santa Clara County would work well as an adventure lab to recognize womanhood, and how maybe you could hide hidden messages or clues within those that will create exciting discovery moments for players. You are welcome to scan this QR code to download the app or look for it in your app store under Geocaching Adventure Lab. And once you do so, it's free to create an account and download. You can see the directory of all the public adventures near you to go play. Also, if you have any questions specifically about the Womanhood project and creating the adventure for that and identifying those locations, feel free to subscribe to the site. Otherwise, if you want to specifically talk to me about Adventure Labs in more detail and maybe want to even set up your own Adventure Lab, you can email me at ellis@geocaching.com. Thank you all for your time and good luck with the project.
Great. That was a great presentation. So thank you both to Courtney and Ellis for their presentations today. We want to spend some time talking to Courtney about coUrbanize. So please, I would like to encourage you all that are watching or are just starting to tune in to go ahead and share your comments or questions in the chat boxes in Facebook or YouTube, and we will be able to see them here on the screen. And of course, if you don't have questions now, please feel free to visit us at www.womanhoodproject.org, where you can connect with our team, Art Builds Community, or you can go ahead and check out coUrbanize and comment there. We're going to bring out Quinn Nguyen, my colleague, as well as Courtney from coUrbanize. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Oh my goodness, just watching your presentation, Courtney, and watching Alice's presentation just makes me even more excited to move forward with this project. Just to introduce myself, because I'm just popping into the program, my name is Quinn Mai, and I am the creative director for Art Builds Community, as well as working on the creative direction with the Art Builds Community team for the Womanhood project. You know, as I was watching from the back end, I couldn't help but just think of all these questions and relating to Alice's presentation. I wish you were here, but just at any capacity, we appreciate both you, Courtney, and Alice for your capacity in the program today. I'm wondering, Courtney, have you ever been geocaching before?
I have not been geocaching, but it's funny, a couple of my friends are really into it and they go with their kids and their kids love it. And like, it's really been a really nice thing for them to get out of the house given COVID and to do it in a safe way and to feel like it's not like, you know, going on a walk for exercise sake. It does feel like you are going on an adventure.
I know. I remember like my first time geocaching. I was over by a Target parking lot trying to find this cache, and I just couldn't. And after a certain point, I was ready to give up until I finally found it, and it was pretty. It was a good feeling, and it is pretty addicting, I have to say. And just to hear about this new program, Adventure Labs, which is similar, from what Alice was saying, was similar to geocaching, but different in that we get to curate these experiences.
Yeah.
So when we think about how Womanhood is using Adventure Labs to curate these experiences, I'm wondering, Courtney, what your I guess your opinion, or just like your thoughts on just seeing Alice's presentation and how Womanhood is using both platforms, coUrbanize and Adventure Labs, to really engage the community in thinking about ways to explore and celebrate women's contributions to the region.
Yeah, I think, you know, something that we've seen a lot of on the platform over the past, you know, year, 18 months, just has been people having a much deeper connection with their local community. And I think that's because, you know, people aren't commuting to work. No one was really going on vacation for a long time. And I think, you know, in absence of other avenues, there only was exploring your community. And I think people have found different things that they've enjoyed doing, whether that's, you know, a new beach or a new park you've never gone to, or appreciating another cultural element of your community that you've just never had a chance to experience. So I think the connection with Adventure Lab is really interesting, because I think people now are actively seeking out these experiences. And the other piece of it is, in technology, we just see so much interest in this idea of gamification. I think the one that comes to mind is Pokemon Go, and how that was just such a great experience for people of all ages. And I think people want to feel some fun again. And so if this is an opportunity for people to have a better connection with their community and to get out there, learn something, have something fun, feel like they're doing something with a purpose, I think it's a really great thing, especially in a community like Santa Clara, where, unlike in Boston, we don't have a lot of, it's not as many weather issues. You can do it more.
No, that's totally awesome. We totally echo that sentiment. Especially during now when we're seeing like how life was pre-pandemic to just the reality that we are dealing with now, just the ways we are engaging with each other. There is an obligation for organizations and businesses to, meet where people are at now, their realities, so that they are safe and they are still engaged with their local communities. I'm wondering, just hearing coUrbanize, because we've used coUrbanize before in previous projects before the pandemic. I would say like before the pandemic and then leading into the pandemic. And so I'm wondering, has there been any new trends or like a peak in usage of coUrbanize itself as we were transitioning into the pandemic? Have you seen more users being engaged, or more businesses or organizations participating into the programs?
Yeah, it's been a really weird thing to say that 2020 and the pandemic was a good thing for our business, but in some ways there was an absence of other ways to connect with the community, especially as it relates to public planning and the process around getting a particular new real estate project approved. You couldn't get people all together in a public meeting. It just wasn't happening. Yes, things have moved to Zoom, but people were really looking for other alternatives. So the pandemic, I think, fueled that. But I think even more so than that, there was just this realization that these processes really lack equity. There is only a certain amount of people who can go to a public meeting at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. And that in and of itself is lacking in so many things around inclusion. So I think we've seen a little bit of a sea change around that we do a lot less convincing when we're talking to people for the first time. They're already convinced that they have to do things differently. And that has been a welcome change. On our platform, we've also made some choices around how are we going to change given everything that is happening in the world. So one of the big things has just been for projects, more so on the real estate development side, how are you asking existing residents about what their needs are and how those needs have changed over time? So we saw a lot of people asking questions about, do you need better access to healthcare? Do you need better access to food at the very beginning of the pandemic, when food aspects, especially access in urban areas, was really challenging for people? So I think that's been a nice change. In terms of the types of projects, we're doing a lot more on, I would say, the planning side and also affordable housing. So affordable housing projects right now there's a lot of them, which is great. I think people have realized that the housing crisis in this country it's unacceptable. So it's good to see that projects are going forward, and they're usually a little bit smaller than, their large mega project. They're really kind of ingrained in our community, but I think affordable housing providers really understand the importance of activating a community, because there's usually a whole department related to resident services and making sure that people beyond their connection to their home are getting what they need to be successful in their life. So that has been something that we're doing a lot more of. The more negative side of that is that affordable housing projects face a lot of feedback and misconceptions and bias. So they've really been trying to get ahead of the game, because they're really hard to get approved, and we really need them. So it's been an okay year. It's been a challenging year. I think overall our team is happy and healthy, which is all we can ask for. But Yeah, there's been a little bit of a sea change, just like we're all familiar with Zoom now. Everyone, I think, is more comfortable with technology. So that, at the end of the day, I think has been the most applicable change across the board for everyone we talk to.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, I think even for ourselves, as we entered the pandemic year in March, you know, we were starting projects, and I think that's when we started working with coUrbanize
Yeah.
as Art Builds community, and you know, really had to try to find that transition on, you know, you're speaking on equity and inclusion, accessibility, and found that this is a platform that does all of that. And
Yeah.
we've definitely been appreciative, though of course we don't want the we don't
Yeah.
want the pandemic.
I
You
know.
know, it's just been really it's been a great platform to learn about. So you know, we have some questions in here, and I want to hit one of them. Has coUrbanize done other public art-based projects? So I know that you shared the Palo Alto and Glendale projects. I know Glendale had public art. Were there any others that maybe you want to speak on?
Yeah, so it's funny, they're all on the West Coast. They're all primarily in California, so I don't know if there's just more funding for public art, which would be fantastic to have on the East Coast. But we do a lot of work as it relates to individual public art projects on the West Coast, but also that's a big component for individual planning projects, whether that's, you know, a parks planning project or an individual new real estate development that's happening. So we actually really think about public art as a piece of all of the projects we do, because we want to make sure that the team is thinking of ways to really celebrate the local history and culture of the community. And public art is usually a great way to do that, because usually in any type of kind of park planning project or a real estate project, there's an art budget, which is kind of nice. So we have a whole set of questions that we really allow the team to use specifically around, you know, what aspects of local history do we need to highlight that aren't already highlighted? What's something within this community that we don't know about? And that's especially an important question if it's a team that doesn't work in a particular area very often. So we try to think about public art as being a part of almost all of the projects we do. And then we do have specific projects where we're taking on kind of master art planning projects. So the project in Glendale is an example of that. And then we did one avenue in Palo Alto that has had an investment around thinking of what kind of public art could we put in that one particular area of the community.
Thank you. Yeah. We are familiar with the Palo Alto. That was one of our projects. So let's see. We have some more questions here. So I want to see which ones we can go with. What kind of site? Well, let's see. So what kinds of sites do you want us to know? Places where events happen, places where women lived. I think that's probably for us, Quinn.
Yeah.
You know, more of, you know, we're thinking about women or groups of women that have made some type of impact, you know, whether it's a mother who decided to make a fierce statement on something with schools, or an auntie who's done something to support keeping, I don't know, I'm trying to think of examples that I've been reading, keeping liquor stores out of low income areas, so that children, that's not the only thing they see. You know, they have community resources instead. Or you know, are we thinking about groups of women that supported the agricultural the region during times of when there was a lot of I was going to say vineyards because we were talking about that earlier, the orchards here in the valley. I don't know, you want to add to any of those, Quinn?
I mean, those are definitely great examples of what we're looking for when it comes to putting things on the map. I welcome people to pin things where they know historical events have happened that relate to women and like movement powered by women, empowered by women. And, you know, the existing spaces that maybe you go to on a regular basis, the parks or the schools. I know there are a lot of schools out there that are named, excuse me, are named after women, yet we're not sure of the context behind that person. And so there is a lot out there just from experiencing some of the preliminary research from pinning, like we were able to find just like a good amount, but for as big as the county is, I'm sure there's a lot more that we are yet finding or uncovering and honoring and recognizing. And so when it comes to pinning these places, we welcome all of those, from what Amanda had said, from historical events, and even the people within your specific community, like now, present day. Like you have educators out there who are honoring and leading youth into being better version of themselves, or you have a lot of different working groups, organizations out there, grassroots groups who are doing a lot of the movement work, and are oftentimes are comprised of women across all intersectional identities. And so there's a lot out there, and we see it, we know it. They're out there, but oftentimes they're often overshadowed by bigger organizations or working behind the scenes. And we're looking for them. We want them to come out of the shadows. And unfortunately, that seems to be the narrative that is often showcased, women behind the scenes holding up others, especially women of color. And so, now that, this initiative started by the County of Santa Clara and Office of Women's Policy, it's just so great to see that push for all of this. And so we hope that encourages everybody to start pinning on the map. I'll soon put the link to coUrbanize into the chat.
Thank you, Quinn. Yeah, and I also like to add street names. I think this is something that we've been also hearing a lot in the past year: changes of street names, changes of school names, of buildings, and that is another opportunity that we are thinking about, or wanting to learn more about. San Jose has a lot of families that have been a part of this community, that we see street names all the time and may not know who is actually associated or behind those family names. So we encourage people to even pin areas that are around maybe the street, and you can leave a comment in those areas, and that gives us a little bit more information. And we'll be watching those daily as comments come up, and we'll be knowing what's out there that you share, and we'll be able to connect with you and ask more questions about that. So I think I wanted to ask another question actually around coUrbanize really quick, because I wonder if this is a quick answer. It's interesting. Have any universities incorporated coUrbanize into any curriculum?
I actually spoke at the Boston Architectural College to a class on Thursday night. So that we try to do things like that, where we're actually going and talking to people who are future architects, future planners, future developers. So I don't think we've necessarily been wrapped into a particular curriculum. We've done a lot with different classes. We've done things at MIT, Boston Architectural College, and then one that's interesting is Boston University. They have a whole initiative on cities and city planning, and they actually went and looked at the effectiveness of different in-person strategies for engagement versus virtual strategies. And there's a whole report that has been written up around that as it relates to bias in real estate development, is particularly on the housing side. So we try to interact kind of on a class by class basis. I think what's interesting, and potentially I think this is a bigger challenge with college curriculums, just is how much of it is the kind of the practicum of what's going to be on your plate when you become a city planner, or when you get into any of these other trades. And I think sometimes this comes up after the fact. How do you actually engage the community? So we're starting to see a little bit more of it, but I don't know if we're, on the curriculum anywhere yet. I would love for us to be, though.
Yeah, and, it reminds me also of just what we were talking about, right? About and what we're doing right now. How it's also teaching people history, and you're doing that through learning about the locations of
Yeah.
possible developments and
Yeah.
learning about the culture. Yeah, absolutely. So, no, thank you. I think it would be very interesting. I've shared coUrbanize with colleagues here in the Santa Clara County. I don't know if we mentioned this already, but coUrbanize is based in the East Coast, in Boston area, and many clients have been in the West Coast, and so we're starting to hear more and more about it. And I think that it'd be interesting to learn more about that study of people gathering in person and online. I don't think we're going to leave this anytime soon
Yeah.
in the next couple of years. So how do we figure out a way to accommodate both? And I think this kind of ties into one of the questions that we were actually talking about, but now has also popped up on the chat is if you can tell us a little bit about coUrbanize and how it evolved and the people that are in it. Because I think we talked about it being women led, and this is a womanhood project run being pushed by the Office of Women's Policy, and Art Builds Community is a women-led firm that is working with our client Office of Women's Policy. So this is just yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so our CEO and founder, Karen Brandt, founded coUrbanize while she was at MIT getting her master's in city planning. And the story that she often tells is, she was in a class, like jazzed to go to a community meeting and present plans for an upcoming project. And then they went to this community meeting and it was just really nasty and not super productive. And it was such a difference between what people thought they were going to have as their experience versus the reality of going to a community meeting. So she kind of sought out to think about, how can more people have a voice in their community, and why is that important? And if we go kind of back to the foundational level of it, the most impactful thing that is built into who you are is where you're born and where you live as a child. And that's so deeply committed to what your future is going to look like. So Karen wanted to create something that was going to allow people to create pretty meaningful change pretty quickly in their communities. And if you look at kind of how communities change, buildings and development are a big part of that. Planning is a big part of that. So that's kind of how she started along the path of coUrbanize. So it was founded in 2013, and we did a run in Techstars, which is a startup accelerator on the East Coast, and we've been around for about eight years now. So our team is about 15 people. A large majority of them are women. So our CFO is a woman, our head of customer success is a woman, our entire engineering team is female, which is pretty incredible. It's not always that you find a whole team of software engineers who are women. So that's nice. Our board, 2 out of 3 members are women. So we try to really think about creating a company that reflects the communities where we're working. Part of that is having, gender diversity. And now we're also really we've been thinking about this for a while, other aspects of making sure our company is reflective of the communities where we're working. And, startups, I think, aren't traditionally thinking about, or aren't always a diverse group of people. Usually, like in Boston, I think we get this a little bit in the San Francisco area. Like there's a tech bro stereotype that lives in all of our minds. They wear a vest, it's blue shirt, they wear khakis. And our company is very different than that. We also tend to hire people who don't necessarily have a background in technology. So one of the women on my team, Kristen, she spent 4 years, the first 4 years out of college in the Dominican Republic doing economic development work through the Peace Corps. So we also try to think about what are the diverse lived experiences that we can have on the team.
Oh my goodness, I love that whole story. Just
Yes.
even the mention of really focusing on and learning from those who have those lived experiences. That's so important, especially when it comes to projects like Womanhood or the projects that you host through coUrbanize. It's community development should be based on the lived experiences of people living in there. I want to kind of focus on this next question by Christine Kraft. Would be great to hear your thoughts, ideas about how women's walking route could emerge through womanhood. What makes a route safe, interesting, educational? So many ancient trees to share with community.
Ah, that's a good one.
Thanks, Christine.
Mhm.
Wow. Let's see. Do you want to? I think what comes to mind when thinking about how we can highlight walking trails or make it educational and accessible, incorporating it into the experience of Adventure Labs, because with Adventure Labs, that's a curated experience using, and I like to, and this is not promotion for it, but I kind of call it similar to like the Amazing Race, where the concept of, people having clues or trivias and going on to the next and going on to the next. And we have that opportunity for womanhood to make this experience of learning fun for people. And with any topic from women's history, even with the ancient trees, like, we don't know that, but there are opportunities to do that. Maybe there are opportunities to create informational signs in honor of the spaces around there, and maybe the women who helped make those spaces along the walking trails. There's even opportunity to create art, public art, and with womanhood, when we say public art, we mean a very broad, diverse range of art across different methods and disciplines. And so when Christine, when you bring up walking trails, I think about, wouldn't it be so cool if you're walking and then all of a sudden you see you're able to access different forms of augmented reality within your experience, where perhaps you can raise your phone and it speaks more on the trees, or maybe it speaks more on the land where a lot of the traditions and around natives and their history of how they live in the land, and the women that work the land. And when I think about that, I think about agriculture as well. And so there's so many ways to make it safe, interesting, and educational, because with Adventure Labs or just these guided routes, they can be self-guided, and they can be guided within your immediate pod. I think that's what we're calling it now, our pods. And so it's safe to do so, and it's accessible across all ages. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Amanda.
No, but I think you also you responded to one of the other questions of, are there any geocaches that are including augmented reality finds? So, I think we're definitely keeping that in mind. Those have been part of the conversations behind the scene. And great, we just got a response from Christine. So love it. Thanks, Quinn. I'm thinking specifically of downtown walks, not necessarily the way spaces and trails that function as parks. Yeah, I think, as I live downtown, where a lot of the work we do and know is downtown specific, and I know that there's definitely areas that we want to think about as being safe areas. So I think there's opportunity to do smaller pods of walks maybe together at some point, where we do a walking tour for those who feel like maybe safety is an issue for them. But we also want to keep in mind that this is a very large project. This is 15 cities and towns that we are including in this project. The county is from Palo Alto to Gilroy, as I think we showed on the map earlier. And so we definitely want to think about all of the spots of where women can take these walks and learn about the areas. I also want to mention, while we're here and kind of on this conversation of getting around, that we are going to be working with the Valley Transit Authority, the VTA, which is our South Bay public transit hub, and really pushing this project with them throughout the county. So I want to encourage everybody to keep an eye out with what they'll be posting and supporting, and how they'll be supporting this project.
I also want to add, for Christine, I encourage you, because when you're speaking about downtown walks, I encourage you to pin those on the map, places that maybe you would be interested in us helping curate and make those tours safe. Like, it's so easy. You just go onto the map, zoom into the specific places, and then just pin it. And we'll see it. We'll interact with you on that space. And if more people support it, they'll show it. And so we're definitely down to explore different routes for tours.
So we had a question earlier, and I know it says, how can you imagine womanhood involving kids in the mapping and gaming project? But I'm actually also curious, Courtney, is that, you mentioned the experience that the founder had when she went into this community meeting while getting her master's, and did she also think about how to engage the families more, as parents are thinking about the school, thinking about their communities that their children are growing up in, has there been projects where you have seen interaction that is family oriented, or I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of projects where they're really trying to understand what particular activities would you come here and do with your family? What activities would you come here and do solo? What activities do you want your kids to be able to come here and do in a programmatic way that's hosted by Parks and Rec or some other entity? So those are questions that are often curating ideas from the community around. I think the other thing around coUrbanize that is really nice is who goes to a public meeting versus who doesn't. Usually parents with children are not going to a public meeting just because of childcare constraints, busy lives. So we often see that we find, just kind of scrolling through the comments, you hear more ideas involving families and children online on the platform, just because I think it's really easy for them to, send a text in or to post a comment online, while living very busy lives. The other thing that I would say, a cool example from a public planning process in Texas that we did, they really actually wanted to engage people in their teens. So they actually did a whole photography contest around, here's the parks I think it was a parks and trail system. And they did a photography contest for teenagers to say, we want to see your photography in these areas. We know you're here. We know you're hanging out here. We want to hear from you. And I thought that was a really cool way of getting to a group of people who are usually spending a lot of time in the community, who are kind of coming into their own, or going to be making a decision about, is this somewhere where I want to continue to live, and allowing them to have a voice in the process. That project also did something around poetry that was really interesting and geared towards, I think, largely people in their 20s, but also teenagers. So I think you can think about, what are the groups of people that you want to activate in all of these projects. Parents are going to want to be asked different questions than people who are single. Kids who are in their teenage years are going to want to give different ideas than, oh, I would like this park to maybe be cleaner. I think we all want those things, but I think you have to give them opportunities to provide feedback on what's important to them.
I want to add, because I'm glad you mentioned that, because I know with coUrbanize, when we were doing our previous projects using the platform, coUrbanize has the accessibility to create signage at parks where people in the moment, especially when it comes to families and kids, they can interact in the moment. I'm wondering if you could speak more on that accessibility.
Yeah, so one of the things that we recommend is trying to get the physical place connected with this kind of virtual platform. So especially in areas that are highly trafficked because they're, a public trail or a public park or just in a downtown center, we'll create signage that says, what would you like to see here? Give some options and say, you can text in your ideas here, or scan this QR code and give your ideas. And I think that is a really great way of getting people to think about what do they want for that area actually while they're in it. And I think sometimes that's that sparks different types of ideas than when you're online trying to, think of a place that you may have been a couple of days ago. So those are usually really great generators of ideas for us. So it's either, you're texting in your ideas to a phone number, easy peasy. You could say, text 1 for you want to see a sculpture here, or text 2 for you want interactive art here. Or you can leave it more open-ended for people to reply and give their feedback on. But I agree. I think it's a nice way to kind of help busy people get involved in the process.
Thank you. I know we're looking forward to, especially with the county so big, we're looking forward to identifying those key spaces to reach, like, especially the hard to reach communities. Meeting people where they're at, whether it's at the bus stop or the park, because that's where they are nowadays. There was like another question here. Let's see. Well, I'll highlight this one only because I think it reaffirms why we are doing this project. It's from women's rights was a mistake. Women's history equals so did men. Laughing emoji, laughing emoji. I just want to say that thank you for bringing that up, because you just basically reaffirmed why it is necessary to put women's recognition into public spaces. Having diverse stories of women across all intersectional identities is needed to normalize the experience of women and to normalize the experience for youth to respect women and their stories and the complexities that they have, to show that women are more than just in servitude. They're nurturers, they're explorers, they can be CEOs, they make change. And so I think any opportunity or comment, whether it may be negative, is an opportunity to flip that perspective and to see what positivity comes, especially when it comes for a project like Womanhood. So thank you.
Absolutely, Quinn. I couldn't agree with you more. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm so glad that you're here with us, Courtney, and you're able to provide, the history of coUrbanize, the background. I think, just we've been working with coUrbanize as a platform to work with our projects, but to learn more about this platform and its history, I think, is even much more powerful. I think this is a story in itself that we're sharing that happens to just not be Santa Clara County, but it's still a story about women and how this group of women with colleagues that are male are really pushing forward this amazing platform during a pandemic, that things can get done still. Projects can still be successful and provide space for a diverse group of people. And we very much appreciate your time and all that you do, even outside of this day, for this platform. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been great. I think that also brings up a cool thing to think about on the map too. Are there female-founded businesses that are worth highlighting? Are there like historical labor movement figures and things like that? I think, as I would assume, in Santa Clara County, there's probably a good chunk of female-founded organizations, whether those are nonprofits, community organizations, businesses, startups, you name it, that could also be really cool things to gather from people on the map.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Well, I know that we said we would be going to 1:30, but I think we'll probably end a little early, and we'll if nobody has any other questions or comments, we want to encourage everybody to to visit the site, and you'll see it in the comment section. It's coUrb.co/ I always say the wrong slash. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, thank you for pulling that up for us on the screen. But you can also visit us at www.womanhoodproject.org. And from there are links to go to the coUrbanize site to sign up for our newsletter to find out more about a lot of the events we're going to have throughout this multi-year project. Follow our social media on Facebook, on Instagram and on Twitter and on Medium if you'd like to follow our blogs. I think I don't want to forget that we also have a second part of this conversation happening on Wednesday, April 28th. It's Cultivating Womanhood, a mapping workshop. So this is where we're actually going to engage with the coUrbanize site Womanhood project. And, people will have the opportunity to give us comments live in that moment. It'll be from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So this is definitely an Eventbrite registration. So please visit our website, look for the Eventbrite, and register. So I just want to, again, thank you, Courtney. And I know Ellis isn't here, so thank you to Ellis. And thank you, Quinn, for joining me. I know the first one I did solo, so this has been great.
Yes, thank you, Courtney. And thank you, Amanda. You always have awesome facilitation. Great host. So.
Yeah, thank you both. It was great to be here.
Okay. Well, until next time, thank you, everyone. And please participate in womanhood. Bye.
Bye.